My wife handed me a bus ticket after our wedding for our honeymoon and said, my company could afford only 2 business class air tickets, so my mom and I are traveling by air, and you can join us by bus. I warned her, you will regret this, and moved out with my luggage. Now she's calling me in a panic from the airport because if you had told me a year ago that I'd walk away from my own honeymoon, like physically turn around at the hotel, grab my suitcase, and bounce, I would have laughed so hard I'd have pulled something. I probably would have said something like, please, I'm the most loyal idiot alive. I'm the guy who still uses the same barber, even though he gave me a mullet in 2019. Walking away from my wife. Never gonna happen. But here's the thing about life. It loves proving you wrong. Usually in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible, like a cosmic prank show where you're the only one not in on the joke. Back then, before everything went sideways, I genuinely believed marriage was all about teamwork, communication, and splitting the last slice of pizza fairly. You know, the sacred pizza rule that separates civilized humans from barbarians. I thought it was about finding your person, building a life together, and maybe arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Normal stuff. Boring stuff. The kind of stuff that doesn't end with you sleeping in a hotel room alone while your wife and her mother jet off to Bali without you. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, and trust me, this story deserves the full context because it's equal parts tragic and hilarious, depending on how much wine you've had. So let me rewind to the beginning, back when I was young and stupid and thought I had this whole love thing figured out. That's when I met Haley, a woman so absolutely dazzling, she could make you forget basic logic, common sense, and the PIN number to your debit card all in one smile. I'm talking the kind of woman who walks into a room and the lighting literally changes, like someone adjusted the filter on reality itself. She had this energy that just pulled you in, and suddenly you're standing there wondering how you ever lived without her laugh, her voice, her completely irrational opinions about whether hot dogs are sandwiches. Spoiler alert, she said they weren't, and I should have known right then that she was capable of dangerous delusions. Our first date was straight out of a romantic movie, the kind that makes single people throw popcorn at the screen out of jealousy. We met at this little jazz bar downtown, the type of place with exposed brick walls, dim lighting that forgives all physical flaws, and a saxophone player who looked like he'd seen some things, but was making peace with it through smooth melodies. She showed up wearing this emerald dress that probably cost more than my car payment, and I swear every guy in the place watched her walk past their table with that special combination of admiration and crushing defeat. But she sat down across from me, ordered a drink with a name I couldn't pronounce, and smiled like I was the only person in the universe worth talking to. We talked for hours. I mean hours. The kind of conversation where you suddenly look up and the bar is closing and you didn't even notice because you were too busy discovering that you both loved the same obscure bands and hated the same popular movies. She told me about her job in corporate PR, which honestly sounded both impressive and soul-crushing. Something about managing brand reputation for companies that definitely didn't deserve good reputations. She made it sound glamorous, though, talking about client meetings and strategy sessions and corporate lunches where people pretend to like each other. I was working in IT support at the time, which is the least glamorous job you can have while still technically being employed, so I mostly just listened and tried not to mention that my day involved explaining to a senior executive that you can't download more RAM. Then she started talking about her family, specifically her amazing mom, Marjorie. The way she lit up when she mentioned her mother should have been my first clue, but I was too busy being hypnotized by her smile and the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. My mom is just the best, she gushed, her eyes going all soft and dreamy. She raised me by herself after my dad left, and she sacrificed everything for me. We're super close. Like, best friends close. She's my rock, you know. And I, being the romantic fool that I was, thought, that's sweet. She's a family girl. She values relationships. She probably knows how to cook because her mom taught her. This is great. This is exactly the kind of values-driven, grounded woman I should marry. Future me would like to travel back in time and slap past me across the face with a reality check, because family girl in this context actually meant permanently attached by Wi-Fi, cell phone, and an emotional umbilical cord that defied all laws of physics and personal boundaries. But I didn't know that yet. I was too busy falling. My buddy Owen, who'd known me since college and had witnessed all my previous romantic disasters, tried to warn me about 3 months into the relationship. We were grabbing beers at our usual spot, this dive bar that served wings so spicy they could strip paint, and I was going on and on about how perfect Haley was and how I was thinking about proposing soon. Owen, who has the emotional intelligence of a brick wall but occasionally stumbles into wisdom, put down his beer and looked at me with unusual seriousness. "Bro," he said, wiping buffalo sauce off his chin with a napkin that immediately disintegrated. "I'm gonna be real with you because I'm your friend, and friends don't let friends make catastrophic life decisions without at least trying to intervene. You're not marrying a woman. You're signing a lease with her mother included in the fine print. Like, rent controlled, can't evict, permanent resident included." I laughed. I actually laughed right in his face, like he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. "Come on, man. So she's close with her mom. That's a good thing. It means she knows how to maintain relationships. It's healthy." Owen gave me this look, the kind of look you give someone who's about to walk into a glass door, but you're too far away to stop them. Healthy? Dude, she calls her mom before making any decision. Any decision. You told me she called her mom to ask if she should order dessert last week. She values her mother's opinion, I said defensively, already knowing how weak that sounded. She's 32 years old and can't order tiramisu without a consultation. Owen shot back. That's not valuing opinions. That's outsourcing your brain. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who's gonna have to buy you whiskey when this implodes. But I wasn't listening. I was in love. That special kind of stupid love that makes you allergic to red flags, immune to common sense, and completely blind to obvious warning signs that are literally waving at you with both hands and an air horn. I thought Owen was being cynical, jaded from his own messy divorce. I thought he just didn't understand what Haley and I had. I thought a lot of dumb things back then. Looking back now, sitting here with the benefit of hindsight and a good therapist, I can see exactly where it all started going wrong. But in that moment, at that jazz bar with the dim lighting and her smile that made me forget my bank balance was crying, I was a goner. Hook, line, and sinker. I was ready to build a life with this woman, and nothing. Not Owen's warnings, not the mounting evidence, not even my own gut telling me something was off, could convince me otherwise. I proposed 4 months later. She said yes. Her mother cried tears of joy that felt slightly territorial. And just like that, I started down the road to the most expensive life lesson I've ever received, paid for in emotional damage, and the security deposit on a honeymoon bungalow I never even got to see. But like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself. You know how in horror movies, there's always that moment where the music gets all ominous and the camera zooms in on something sinister, but the main character just walks right past it because they're too busy being oblivious? That was me during the engagement period. The signs were everywhere, like billboard-sized, neon flashing, impossible to miss signs. But I was too hopped up on love endorphins and wedding planning dopamine to notice I was basically starring in my own psychological thriller. Haley couldn't make a single move without Marjorie's approval. And I'm not talking about big life decisions like buying a house or changing careers. I'm talking about everything. Outfits. Let me send Mom a picture first. Restaurant choices? Mom says the Italian place gave her heartburn once in 1987, so maybe we should go somewhere else. Toothpaste brands? Yes, toothpaste brands. We once spent 20 minutes in the dental aisle at Target while she FaceTimed her mother to discuss the merits of whitening versus sensitivity formula. I stood there holding a basket of groceries, slowly losing my will to live, while a stock boy reorganized the mouthwash and tried not to make eye contact with the sad man whose girlfriend needed maternal guidance to choose Crest. The phrase that still haunts my dreams, the 5 words that could kill romance faster than food poisoning at a seafood buffet, became the soundtrack of our relationship. Let me check with Mom. It didn't matter what I suggested, what plans I made, or what spontaneous adventure I proposed. Those 5 words would come out of her mouth like a reflex, like her brain was hardwired to consult headquarters before making any independent decision. I remember this one time, about 2 months after we got engaged, when I planned this elaborate surprise picnic. I'm talking the full romantic spread here. I went to 3 different stores, bought actual cloth napkins instead of paper ones, got fancy cheese that had names I couldn't pronounce, picked up this wine that cost more than my sneakers, and even brought a Bluetooth speaker for ambience. I found this spot by the lake, laid everything out like I was preparing for a photo shoot, and felt pretty damn proud of myself. When I told Haley about it, her face lit up with this genuine excitement that made all the effort worth it. "Oh my God, that sounds so cute," she said, and for a moment, I thought I'd actually pulled off the perfect romantic gesture. Then came the kicker. "Let me just check with Mom to see if she needs me for anything this afternoon." I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, fancy cheese getting warm on the counter, and felt something inside me die a little. "Babe," I said, trying to keep my voice level and not sound like the jealous boyfriend I was definitely becoming. "It's a surprise picnic. For us. Your mom doesn't need to be involved in this particular decision." She looked at me like I'd suggested we rob a bank. "I just want to make sure she doesn't need my help with anything. She's been stressed about work lately. It'll just take a second." That second turned into a 45-minute phone call where they discussed Marjorie's co-worker's drama, a sale at Nordstrom, and whether Mercury was in retrograde. By the time Haley hung up, she was tired and wanted to just stay in and watch Netflix. The fancy cheese went in the fridge. The picnic never happened, and I learned an important lesson. In this relationship, I was always competing for second place, and my opponent had a 32-year head start. But the real moment of truth, the scene that should have sent me sprinting for the hills, was when I finally met Marjorie in person. Up until that point, she'd been this voice on the phone, this abstract concept I could sort of ignore. Haley had shown me pictures, of course. Lots of pictures, like I was studying for a test on Marjorie's life story. But meeting her face-to-face was a whole different ball game, like the difference between watching a documentary about sharks and actually swimming with one. We met at this upscale brunch place that Marjorie had chosen, naturally, because God forbid I pick a restaurant without her approval. I showed up 15 minutes early because I'm pathologically punctual and also terrified of making bad impressions, ordered a coffee, and tried not to sweat through my button-down shirt. When they walked in together, Haley and Marjorie, they moved like a unit, like they'd choreographed their entrance. Both wearing sunglasses indoors, both carrying designer purses that probably cost more than my security deposit, both with that same confident stride that suggested they owned not just the room, but the entire concept of brunch. Marjorie took off her sunglasses with the dramatic flair of a movie villain revealing themselves, and immediately gave me this look, this slow, deliberate up-and-down scan that made me feel like a suspicious avocado she didn't remember buying and was now questioning the freshness of. Her eyes lingered on my shirt, Target, clearance rack, my shoes, comfortable but definitely not trendy, and my overall vibe, nervous people pleaser with decent credit. I could practically see her running calculations in her head, determining whether I was worthy of her daughter or just another schmuck who'd waste her time. "So," she said, and her voice had this tone that was somehow both sweet and threatening, like poisoned honey. "You're the man trying to take my daughter. Take. Lady, I'm not a Viking raiding a village here. I'm just trying to share Wi-Fi passwords and maybe split some mortgage payments." But I smiled, because that's what you do when you're meeting your future monster-in-law. Mother-in-law, and said something diplomatic like, "I'm hoping to build a life with her, ma'am." "Ma'am," she repeated, like the word tasted weird in her mouth. "How formal." "Haley, he's very formal, isn't he?" She said it like being polite was somehow a character flaw, like I should have walked in and greeted her with a fist bump and called her Marge. The brunch lasted 2.5 hours, which is roughly the same length as some Christopher Nolan movies, but with less entertainment value and more passive-aggressive comments about my career prospects. Marjorie had opinions about everything. My job, not ambitious enough. My apartment, too small for starting a family. My hobbies, video games are for children. And my general life trajectory, unclear and concerning. She asked questions that sounded like job interview questions mixed with interrogation techniques. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your 10-year plan? How much do you have in savings? What's your stance on joint bank accounts? Haley just sat there, nodding along, occasionally adding her own thoughts that were basically echoes of her mother's. It was like watching someone agree with their own reflection. I kept waiting for her to defend me, to tell her mom to ease up, to establish some kind of boundary between her romantic relationship and her maternal one. But it never came. She was Switzerland, neutral, pleasant, and completely useless when you needed someone to pick a side. At one point, Marjorie actually said, I raised her by myself after her father abandoned us. I sacrificed everything. My career, my youth, my social life, to give her the best possible future. I just want to make sure whoever she ends up with understands the value of what they're getting. The way she said, what they're getting, made it sound like Haley was a limited edition collectible that required special handling and came with a non-removable authentication sticker named Marjorie. But here's where I really messed up. I brushed it off. I told myself everyone's got quirks, right? Everyone's family has their weird dynamics and complicated histories. My own mom called me every Sunday without fail, and my dad had strong opinions about lawn care that bordered on obsessive. So what if Haley was close with her mom? So what if Marjorie was a little intense? These were just personality traits, not deal breakers. Love meant accepting people's flaws and baggage and weird family situations. Except this particular quirk came with daily updates, unsolicited advice, and a strong desire to move into our future apartment. Not physically, but spiritually, emotionally, and through the power of unlimited cellular data. Marjorie's presence in our relationship wasn't a quirk. It was a constant third presence, like a ghost that kept rearranging furniture and commenting on our life choices. My coworker Lisa, who'd been married for 7 years and had survived her own in-law nightmares, tried to give me perspective over lunch one day. "Look," she said, stealing a fry off my plate like married people do when they've given up on personal boundaries. "There's being close with family, and then there's what you're describing. If your girlfriend can't order a pizza without consulting her mother, you're not dating an adult. You're dating someone's emotional support human." I laughed it off then too, because that's what I did best, laugh off legitimate concerns and pretend everything was fine. "It'll get better after we're married," I said with the confidence of someone who'd never been married before and had no idea what he was talking about. "Once we have our own place and our own life, things will naturally shift. She'll establish more independence." Lisa gave me the same look Owen had given me, that pitying, knowing look that said, "You poor, stupid man," and just shook her head. "Sure, buddy. Whatever helps you sleep at night." But I wasn't sleeping great, if I'm being honest. I was having these weird stress dreams where I'd be trying to propose to Haley, but Marjorie kept appearing out of nowhere with a checklist and a clipboard, marking things off and telling me I was doing it wrong. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, check my phone, and see 3 texts from Haley about things her mom had said about our relationship. Still, I pressed forward, because I'd already bought the ring, already started telling people we were getting married, already mentally committed to this path. Turning back felt impossible, like I'd invested too much to quit now. It's the same logic that keeps people watching bad movies until the end, just because they've already sat through an hour of it. And so the engagement continued, with Marjorie's shadow growing longer and my doubts getting louder, and me stubbornly pretending that everything was totally normal and fine. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Let me tell you something about wedding planning that nobody warns you about when you're down on one knee with a ring box and hope in your heart. It's not a collaboration. It's not a beautiful journey where 2 people in love make decisions together while sipping champagne and laughing at cake samples. No. Wedding planning is psychological warfare disguised as party planning, and if you're not careful, you'll end up as a spectator at your own ceremony, wondering how you became an extra in someone else's production. The wedding planning phase was less romantic comedy montage with upbeat music and more dictatorship with tool and passive-aggressive seating charts. From the moment Haley's ring hit Instagram, because of course that happened within minutes, complete with a dozen hashtags including hashtag she said yes and hashtag future wife, Marjorie went into full general mode. I'm talking battle plans, strategic meetings, and a 3-ring binder that appeared out of nowhere like she'd been preparing for this moment since Haley's birth. She probably had, honestly. This woman had spreadsheets. Multiple spreadsheets. Color-coded spreadsheets with tabs and formulas and backup spreadsheets in case the main spreadsheets failed. Haley and I had this naive, adorable vision for our wedding. We wanted something small and intimate, maybe on a beach somewhere, with our closest friends and family. You know, the kind of ceremony where you can actually talk to your guests and remember people's names and not spend your entire reception doing a forced march from table to table like you're campaigning for office. We'd wear something comfortable, say our vows with our toes in the sand, have a casual cookout reception, and call it a day. Simple. Meaningful. actually about us and our relationship instead of performing for an audience. Marjorie wanted chandeliers. Plural. She wanted a string quartet, a professional photographer and videographer, a live painter to capture the ceremony in real time, and approximately 200 of her friends, most of whom seemed to be named some variation of Aunt something. Aunt Carol, Aunt Deborah, Aunt Patricia, Aunt Linda, a seemingly endless parade of women I'd never met who apparently had strong opinions about whether we should have a chocolate fountain at the reception. I'll give you one guess who won that particular battle. Spoiler alert, it wasn't me. It wasn't even remotely me. I was so far from winning that I couldn't even see the finish line with binoculars and a GPS. The first real skirmish happened about 2 weeks after the engagement, when Haley and I sat down to actually discuss what we wanted. We were at my apartment. Our apartment, technically, since she'd been staying over more and more, though most of her stuff was still at her place, which was conveniently 10 minutes from Marjorie's house. I'd made dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and pulled out a notebook to jot down ideas. Very organized, very adult, very doomed. So, I said, pouring us both wine and feeling optimistic despite all evidence suggesting I shouldn't. I was thinking we could look at beach venues. Maybe somewhere in California. Or if we want to save money, there are some nice spots up the coast that. My phone buzzed. Then Haley's phone buzzed. Then my phone buzzed again. Text messages from Marjorie, sent in rapid-fire succession like she had some kind of maternal radar that detected whenever we were making plans without her input. Mom wants to be on speakerphone for this conversation, Haley said, already dialing before I could protest. And just like that, our romantic planning session became a conference call. Marjorie's voice filled my apartment with the authority of a CEO addressing the board. I've been thinking about venues, she announced, not bothering with pleasantries like hello or is this a good time. The Grandview Estate has an opening in June. They have gorgeous ballrooms, and they can accommodate up to 300 guests. 300. I choked on my wine. We were thinking more like 50. Silence. The kind of silence that happens right before something explodes. 50. Marjorie repeated, and I could hear the ice forming in her voice through the phone speaker. 50 people. For my only daughter's wedding. The daughter I raised single-handedly for 32 years. That's what you think is appropriate. We just want something intimate. I tried to explain, looking at Haley for backup that never came. Something that feels personal and I have a list of people who need to be invited. Marjorie cut me off. Family members who've been part of Haley's life since she was born. My friends who've supported us through everything. You can't just exclude people because you want to be intimate. That's selfish. Selfish. She called wanting a small wedding at my own ceremony selfish. I felt my eye twitch, which was becoming a regular occurrence whenever Marjorie shared her thoughts. By the time we got to the actual vendor meetings, and there were so many vendor meetings, like we were planning a presidential inauguration instead of a wedding, I had basically lost all creative rights to my own nuptials. The cake tasting was the moment I truly understood how powerless I'd become. We went to this fancy bakery that Marjorie had selected, naturally, and sat down to sample flavors. I was actually excited about this part because, hey, free cake. How bad could it be? The baker brought out sample after sample. Vanilla with raspberry filling, chocolate with espresso buttercream, lemon with lavender. All delicious options that Haley and I were enjoying. I was leaning toward the chocolate espresso because it tasted like happiness in cake form, and Haley seemed to like the lemon lavender. We were actually agreeing on something, having a moment of connection in the chaos. Then Marjorie tasted the almond amaretto cake, a flavor neither Haley nor I had particularly liked, and her eyes lit up. This one, she declared, putting down her fork with the finality of a judge's gavel. This is the one. It's sophisticated, elegant. This says important wedding, not backyard barbecue. But babe, Haley said, and for a second I thought she might actually stand up to her mother. We like the chocolate and the lemon better. Marjorie's expression shifted into what I'd come to recognize as her disappointed mother face, a weapon of mass guilt that could make grown adults question their entire existence. I see. So the cake I prefer, the one I think would be best for your wedding, doesn't matter. My opinion, after everything I've done, doesn't count. And just like that, we were getting almond amaretto cake. The flavor? Marjorie's choice. Might as well have been written on the menu. The color scheme was another battle I lost without even really fighting. Haley and I had talked about soft blues and whites, something beachy and calm. Marjorie wanted Marjorie white, which wasn't even a real color, but apparently meant stark white with gold accents and lots of crystals. It photographs better, she insisted, showing us Pinterest boards she'd created without our knowledge. Trust me, you'll thank me when you see the pictures. My best man Owen, who'd been watching this slow-motion train wreck with increasing concern, whispered to me during the rehearsal dinner. Dude, blink twice if you need extraction. I've got a car running outside. We can be in Mexico by morning. I laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that sounded more like crying. It's fine. It's almost over. Yeah, Owen said, clapping me on the shoulder with the sympathy usually reserved for terminal patients. That's what they all say. The absolute peak of absurdity came about 2 weeks before the wedding, during what was supposed to be our final planning meeting. We were going over the ceremony details, who would stand where, when the music would play, standard stuff. That's when Marjorie dropped her biggest bomb yet. I've been thinking about the processional, she announced, and I should have known from her tone that something insane was coming. Since Haley's father isn't in the picture, and I'm the one who raised her, who sacrificed everything for her, who made her into the woman she is today, I think it only makes sense that I walk her down the aisle. I actually choked. Like, physically choked on my own saliva, and had to cough into my napkin while everyone stared at me. You want to walk her down the aisle? I managed to get out between coughs. I raised her alone, Marjorie said proudly, her chin lifted like she was posing for a statue commemorating her martyrdom. I was both mother and father. Why should that role go to someone else, or to no one at all? This is my moment too. My moment too. Those 4 words echoed in my head like a warning siren. This wasn't about Haley and me anymore. This wasn't even really about Haley. This was the Marjorie show, and we were all just supporting cast members who'd better hit our marks and remember our lines. I looked at Haley, silently begging her to see how completely bananas this was. But she was already tearing up, looking at her mother with that same adoring expression she always had. Mom, that's so sweet. That would be really special. Congratulations, I thought, maintaining my smile while dying inside. You can keep her. Maybe just marry each other and cut out the middleman entirely. I'll just show up as a guest, wear whatever color you tell me to wear, and clap at the appropriate moments. My buddy Jake, who was one of my groomsmen and had been mercifully absent from most of the planning drama, pulled me aside after that meeting. Man, are you sure about this? Because from where I'm standing, you're not getting married. You're being adopted. He wasn't wrong. But I'd already sent the invitations. Well, Marjorie had sent the invitations she'd designed and worded and addressed without my input. The deposits were paid. The machine was in motion. Stopping it felt impossible, like trying to redirect a hurricane by asking it politely to change course. So I smiled, nodded, and mentally prepared myself for a wedding that would have been perfect for someone else entirely. Someone who loved attention, crystal chandeliers, and having their mother-in-law as a permanent third wheel in their marriage. The ceremony was 3 weeks away. I had no idea that was somehow still too far. You know what they tell you about your wedding night? They say it's magical, romantic, the culmination of all your dreams, and the beginning of your beautiful new life together. They show you movies where the happy couple can't keep their hands off each other, where they're so in love they can barely make it through the hotel room door. They sell you this fantasy of rose petals and champagne and waking up the next morning tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets with your soulmate, watching the sunrise together while discussing your perfect future. Yeah, that's not what happened. Our first morning as husband and wife, I woke up alone. Not dead, though honestly, that might have been less jarring, just alone. Completely, utterly, confusingly alone in a king-sized bed that suddenly felt about 3 miles wide. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole wedding. Maybe I was still single, still living in blissful ignorance, still unaware of what fresh hell awaited me. But then I saw the tuxedo crumpled on the chair, the wedding bands on the nightstand, and the just married sash someone had draped over the TV as a joke. Nope, definitely married. Just apparently married to a ghost. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and looked around our honeymoon suite. The one I'd paid extra for because it had a balcony and a jacuzzi tub and was supposed to be perfect for newlyweds. The bathroom door was open, lights off. The balcony was empty. Her phone was gone from the charger. No note, no text message waiting on my phone, Nothing to explain where my wife of approximately 12 hours had vanished to. My first thought, because I'm apparently an optimist despite mounting evidence that I shouldn't be, was that maybe she'd gone down to get us breakfast. You know, a cute surprise, maybe some coffee and pastries, a sweet gesture to start our first day as a married couple. She'd come back any minute with a tray and that smile, and we'd have breakfast in bed and laugh about how I thought she'd disappeared. This was fine. Everything was fine. I checked my phone, 9:47 a.m. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I got up, threw on some pants and a t-shirt, and tried not to let my imagination run wild with increasingly absurd scenarios. Maybe she got lost in the hotel. Maybe she was planning another surprise. Maybe aliens had abducted her, which honestly would have been easier to process than the truth. At 10:15, my phone finally buzzed. A text from Haley. Getting breakfast with mom. Be back soon, Red Heart. I stared at that message for a solid minute, reading it over and over like maybe I'd misunderstood the words. Getting breakfast with mom. On the morning after our wedding. The morning that was supposed to be OURS. The first morning of our married life. And she was having brunch with Marjorie like it was just another Sunday. I typed out about 15 different responses, each one progressively more sarcastic and angry, then deleted them all and just sent back. Okay. What else could I say? Hey babe, maybe prioritize your husband on literally the first day of our marriage. That would have made me sound needy. Your mom can't survive one breakfast without you? That would have made me sound jealous. So I just sat there in our honeymoon suite, alone, feeling like I'd just purchased a very expensive membership to a club that didn't actually want me as a member. She came back at 11:30, a full 2.5 hours later, carrying a small bag of croissants like they were trophies from some grand adventure. She practically floated into the room, her face glowing with that post-Marjorie time happiness that I was beginning to recognize and deeply resent. Morning, husband, she said cheerfully, kissing me on the cheek like she hadn't just ditched me on what was supposed to be a special morning. I brought you a chocolate croissant. Your favorite. I took the croissant, because what else was I going to do, and tried to keep my voice neutral. So, breakfast with your mom. Yeah, she wanted to talk about the wedding, go over all the details while they were still fresh. She was so happy with how everything turned out. Did you know Aunt Patricia cried during the ceremony? And the centerpieces were apparently even more beautiful in person than in the pictures. Mom got so many compliments. She was unpacking the croissants, arranging them on the fancy hotel plates, completely oblivious to my expression. That's great, I said, and I could hear the edge in my own voice but couldn't quite control it. Really great that you got to recap the wedding with your mom. On our first morning, as a married couple. She looked up, finally catching my tone. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? I wanted to say, where do I even start? How about the fact that I woke up alone in our honeymoon suite? How about the fact that you prioritized your mother over your husband of less than 24 hours? How about the fact that this is supposed to be our time, and we can't seem to go 5 minutes without your mom being involved somehow? But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I took a bite of the croissant and said, nothing. Just thought we'd have breakfast together. Here. Alone. We are having breakfast together, she said, gesturing at the croissants like that solved everything. I brought food. You brought leftovers from a breakfast you had with someone else. Don't be dramatic. She laughed, actually laughed, like I was being ridiculous. Mom just wanted to spend a little time with me before we leave for the honeymoon. You know how emotional she gets. Besides, she had some really good advice about making sure we don't rush into things. And there it was, the line that would haunt me for months afterward. Mom says the honeymoon shouldn't be rushed. I put down my croissant. The honeymoon shouldn't be rushed? What does that even mean? We're going on our honeymoon. That's literally the opposite of rushing. That's the plan. That's what people do after they get married. She just means we should make sure we're taking time to process everything, not just jumping from one big event to another without reflection. It's actually really wise when you think about it. Wise. She thought it was wise that her mother was giving us advice about our honeymoon pacing. I was beginning to think Mom was our third roommate. Invisible but omnipresent, like Wi-Fi or carbon monoxide or my slowly dying dreams of a normal marriage. She didn't need to physically be in the room to control what happened in it. She was always there, a constant presence in every decision, every conversation, every moment that should have been intimate and private. I spent the rest of that day trying to shake off the weirdness of the morning, telling myself I was overreacting, that it was just wedding stress, that things would get better once we actually left for the honeymoon. We walked around the hotel grounds, had lunch at the restaurant downstairs, tried to enjoy being newlyweds. But every time I started to relax, Haley's phone would buzz with a text from Marjorie. Update texts, question texts, random observation texts, just thinking about you red heart texts. At one point, we were sitting by the pool, and I counted 7 incoming messages from Marjorie in 15 minutes. 7. That's one message every 2.1 minutes. I did the math because I was losing my mind. Does she know you're on your honeymoon? I asked, watching Haley type out another response. She's just excited, Haley said, not looking up from her phone. She put so much work into the wedding. She wants to make sure we're happy. Happy, right? Because nothing says happy newlyweds, like one of them being surgically attached to their phone, maintaining constant communication with their mother like she was mission control and we were astronauts on a dangerous space mission. Later that week, back at work because our actual honeymoon was still 2 weeks away. Another detail Marjorie had influenced, something about better weather later in the month. I vented to my coworker Jared. He'd been married for 3 years, had a kid, seemed to have his life together. Surely he'd have some wisdom, some reassurance that this was normal newlywed stuff. So your wife ditched you on your first morning as a married couple to have breakfast with her mom, Jared repeated, leaning back in his office chair and whistling low. Wow. That's bold. Tell me it's a phase, I said, and I could hear the desperation in my voice. Tell me this is just transition period weirdness and she'll detach soon. Jared made a face, the kind of face that people make when they're about to deliver bad news, but want to soften it first. Look, man, I don't want to be a downer, but in my experience, people don't really change their core relationship patterns. If she's this attached now, marriage isn't going to magically create boundaries. If anything, she might think now that you're locked in, she doesn't have to change anything. That's not helpful, Jared. You asked for honesty, he shrugged. My advice: have a real conversation with her about expectations and boundaries. Like an actual serious talk, not just hints and passive-aggressive comments. Because otherwise, you're looking at a lifetime of being the second most important person in your wife's life. He was right, of course. I knew he was right. But having that conversation felt impossible, like trying to explain water to a fish. How do you tell someone that their relationship with their mother is unhealthy when they've lived that way their entire life and think it's normal? So I did what I did best. I avoided the confrontation, told myself things would improve naturally, and hoped that somehow, magically, the situation would resolve itself without me having to actually address it directly. Yeah, like a barnacle detaches from a ship, voluntarily, through the power of positive thinking. Spoiler alert, barnacles don't work that way, and neither did Marjorie. Moving in together after the wedding should have been exciting. You know, that milestone moment where you combine your lives, merge your stuff, argue about whose furniture is better, and finally have your own space to build a life together. I'd imagined cozy mornings making coffee in our pajamas, lazy Sunday afternoons binge-watching shows, maybe even some of that domestic bliss people talk about where you grocery shop together and pretend to enjoy it. I had this whole vision of what married life would look like, and spoiler alert, none of it included a third party who wasn't paying rent, but somehow had executive decision-making power. We moved into my apartment. Well, our apartment now, legally speaking, though it quickly became apparent that "our" was a very flexible term. I'd lived there for 3 years, had it set up exactly how I liked it. My couch positioned for optimal TV viewing, my kitchen organized in a way that made sense to me, my bathroom stocked with the basic necessities that single dudes need. It was my space, my sanctuary, the place I could come home to and just exist without performing or pretending or checking with anyone about anything. That lasted approximately 48 hours after Haley moved in. Marjorie had opinions about everything. And I mean everything. The furniture? Too bachelorish. You need pieces that say established couple, not college dorm room. My couch, which I'd saved up for and genuinely loved, apparently screamed, I make poor life choices to her discerning eye. The curtains? Too dark. You need to let in more light. Natural light is essential for mental health and proper circadian rhythms. Never mind that I'd specifically chosen dark curtains because I worked night shifts sometimes and needed to sleep during the day. The kitchen layout? Inefficient. The dishes should be near the dishwasher. And why do you have your coffee mug so far from the coffee maker? That's just creating unnecessary steps. She didn't live there. She didn't pay for anything there. She just showed up constantly and had detailed critiques about every single aspect of our living space like she was a home inspector who'd found major code violations. The first time she came over after we'd moved Haley's stuff in, I thought it would be a quick visit. You know, come say hi, see how we're settling in, maybe stay for a cup of coffee, then leave so we could continue organizing and enjoying our newlywed bubble. I was so naive it's almost cute. Marjorie arrived at 10 a.m. with a folder, an actual physical folder full of paint swatches, furniture catalogs, and printouts from interior design websites. I've been thinking about the space, she announced, walking in without waiting for an invitation, immediately starting to rearrange the throw pillows on my couch. It has potential, but it needs work. Significant work. Haley lit up like Christmas morning. Mom, you didn't have to do all this research. Of course I did, sweetie. I want you to have a beautiful home. Now, I'm thinking we should repaint. This beige is so depressing. Maybe a nice sage green in the living room? And the bedroom definitely needs to be redone. That navy blue is far too dark for good sleep energy. We just moved in, I interjected, trying to keep my voice pleasant and not sound like the territorial caveman I was definitely feeling like. Maybe we should live in the space for a bit before making major changes? Both of them looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the place down. Live with it, Marjorie repeated, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising into her hairline. Why would you want to live with something suboptimal when you could fix it immediately? That's just accepting mediocrity. And that's how, 3 days later, I found myself helping to paint my own apartment a color I hadn't chosen, moving furniture I'd liked where it was, and watching my personal space slowly transform into something that looked like it had been decorated by a committee I wasn't on. But the real kicker, the thing that really drove home how thoroughly my life had been invaded, was Haley's phone situation. Her ringtone for her mother was the national anthem. I'm not joking. The actual Star-Spangled Banner. The first time it went off, we were in the middle of dinner. I'd cooked, actually tried to make something nice, lit a candle and everything. And suddenly Francis Scott Key was blaring through the apartment like we were at a baseball game. Haley literally stood up, like, physically rose from her chair at attention, grabbed her phone, and answered it while still standing there like she was saluting. Hi, Mom. I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, watching my wife treat her mother's phone call with more reverence than most people reserve for actual emergencies or lottery winnings. And this wasn't a one-time thing. This became the pattern. Every single time Marjorie called, which was approximately 7 to 12 times per day, I counted. Haley would drop everything, stand up if she was sitting, and answer with this weird mixture of urgency and delight. Babe, I said one night after she'd interrupted our movie for the third time to take a call from Marjorie about whether she should buy the red sweater or the burgundy sweater. Do you think maybe we could establish some phone-free times? Like, when we're eating dinner or watching something together. She looked at me like I'd asked her to cut off her own arm. It's my mom. I can't just ignore her calls. I'm not saying ignore her. I'm saying maybe let it go to voicemail sometimes and call her back when we're done with what we're doing. But what if it's important? Has it ever been actually important? Like, emergency level important? She thought about it for a second, then shrugged. Well, no, but it could be. And she'd be so hurt if I didn't answer. She'd think I was mad at her or something. So we lived in this constant state of interruption, where any moment of connection or intimacy or just normal couple time could be, and frequently was, derailed by the national anthem blaring from Haley's phone. We couldn't finish a conversation, couldn't watch a movie without pausing, couldn't even have a fight without Marjorie's musical intervention reminding us that there were 3 people in this marriage, even if only 2 of us were physically present. Our weekends disappeared faster than free samples at Costco. Every Saturday and Sunday, time that should have been ours to do couple things, run errands together, or just be lazy, got swallowed up by Marjorie's needs and wants and elaborate plans she'd made without consulting us. Brunch with Marjorie, shopping with Marjorie, helping Marjorie reorganize her garage, going to look at new cars with Marjorie even though she wasn't planning to buy one. She just wanted company. Attending Marjorie's book club where I was the only man and everyone kept asking me invasive questions about our marriage like they were conducting research. Can't we have one weekend to ourselves? I asked Haley one Friday night, already dreading the schedule she'd probably agreed to without asking me. Mom's been feeling lonely lately, Haley said, scrolling through her phone and not even looking at me. Her friend Carol moved to Florida, and she's been having a hard time with it. We should be there for her. What about being there for each other? What about us having time for our own relationship? We live together. We have all the time in the world. Except we didn't, because even when we were physically alone in the apartment, Marjorie was there. Through texts, through calls, through the mental space she occupied in Haley's head constantly. I could see it. Haley would be sitting next to me on the couch, but her attention was miles away, probably wondering what her mom was doing, whether she needed anything, if she was okay by herself. Our privacy vanished like my dignity and common sense had months earlier. Marjorie had a key to the apartment, for emergencies, supposedly, though her definition of emergency seemed to include, I was in the neighborhood, and I brought over some leftovers, and I wanted to see you. She'd show up unannounced, let herself in, and act surprised when I was there in my own home, sometimes in my underwear, because I thought I had privacy in my own damn apartment. You really should get dressed earlier in the day, she'd say, averting her eyes dramatically like I was committing some kind of indecent exposure by wearing boxer shorts in my living room at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. What if someone stops by? Someone did stop by. I wanted to scream. You stopped by? Unannounced. With a key you shouldn't be using for non-emergencies. But I didn't scream. I just went to the bedroom and put on pants, seething quietly while listening to Haley and Marjorie chat happily in the kitchen like this was totally normal behavior. My buddy Marcus came over one evening, one of the few times I'd managed to carve out time with my own friends, and witnessed the phone situation firsthand. We were playing video games, having a beer, just hanging out like adults are allowed to do. The national anthem started playing. Haley answered. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. The call was still going. Haley laughing in the kitchen about something her mother had said about her coworker's drama. Marcus paused the game and looked at me. Dude, what the hell? Welcome to my life, I said, taking a long drink of my beer. That's not normal, man. You know that's not normal, right? Oh, I'm aware. And you're just accepting this? This is your life now. I didn't have a good answer for that. Because yeah, apparently this was my life now. I'd signed up for marriage and gotten a package deal that included unlimited mom minutes, zero privacy, and a constant nagging feeling that I was the third wheel in my own relationship. Still, I held on, because that's what I did. I kept telling myself it was just an adjustment period, that eventually we'd find our rhythm, that things would naturally improve once we settled into married life. Love was supposed to be patient, right? Love was supposed to endure. Love was supposed to conquer all obstacles, even obstacles shaped like your mother-in-law who treated your home like her second living room and your wife like her emotional support animal. I convinced myself that I was being the bigger person by not making ultimatums, by not forcing Haley to choose between her mother and her husband, by just accepting the situation and hoping it would evolve naturally over time. I thought I was being mature, understanding, compassionate about the complicated mother-daughter dynamic. Looking back, I realize I wasn't being any of those things. I was just being a coward, too scared to rock the boat, too conflict-averse to actually address the massive elephant in the room that was slowly crushing our marriage under its weight. But I didn't know that yet. I still thought love and patience would be enough, that I could outlast this phase, that eventually Haley would wake up one day and realize she'd married me, not her mother, and things would magically correct themselves. Yeah, because that's definitely how deeply ingrained family dynamics work. Through magic and wishful thinking. Narrator voice, it was not how they worked. After months of living in what I can only describe as a three-person marriage where I was consistently the least important member, the honeymoon was finally approaching. 2 glorious weeks in Bali. Beaches, temples, incredible food, and most importantly, an ocean between us and Marjorie. I'd been holding on to this trip like a lifeline, telling myself that once we got away, once we had actual distance and dedicated time together, things would reset. We'd reconnect. We'd remember why we got married in the first place. We'd be actual newlyweds instead of whatever weird roommate situation we'd been living in. I'd done research, bookmarked restaurants, found these amazing snorkeling spots, Even learned a few basic Indonesian phrases so I wouldn't be a complete tourist stereotype. I'd upgraded our hotel room to one with an ocean view and a private balcony, splurging on something romantic because I figured we needed it. This was going to be our do-over, our chance to start the marriage on the right foot after stumbling out of the gate like a drunk giraffe. The night before our departure, I was in full preparation mode. Suitcase open on the bed, checking and rechecking my packing list, making sure I had everything. Passport, sunscreen, that fancy camera I'd bought specifically for this trip, the guidebook with all my notes and plans. I was actually excited, genuinely hopeful for the first time in weeks. I'd even hidden a small gift in my carry-on to surprise Haley with on the plane. This little handmade bracelet I'd found at a craft fair, with these blue beads that matched her eyes. I know, super cheesy, but I was trying. I was really trying to make this work. That's when Haley walked into the bedroom holding 3 tickets. Not 2, 3. My brain didn't immediately process what I was seeing because it was so absurd, so completely outside the realm of possibility, that my mind just kind of short-circuited. 2 of the tickets were clearly airplane tickets. I could see the airline logo, the business class designation, the flight times. The third was different. Longer, with a bus company logo I vaguely recognized from billboards. So, funny story, Haley said, and she had this weird smile on her face like she was about to deliver news that was quirky and amusing rather than absolutely insane. My company could only afford 2 business class flights for the honeymoon package. Budget constraints or whatever. But the good news is, they found an alternative solution. I stared at her, my hand frozen in the middle of folding a shirt. Alternative solution. I repeated slowly, my brain still trying to catch up to what was happening. Yeah. So Mom and I are taking the business class flights. They're direct, super comfortable, like 8 hours total. And you can take this bus route. She held up the bus ticket like it was a winning lottery ticket instead of a one-way pass to hell. It's a little longer, obviously, but you'll get there eventually, and it's actually kind of an adventure when you think about it. You'll see parts of the countryside that people who fly miss out on. I blinked, then blinked again, waited for the punchline, for her to start laughing and say, just kidding, and pull out my actual plane ticket. But she just stood there, smiling, genuinely seeming to think this was a reasonable plan. Haley, I said, and my voice came out way calmer than I felt, which is usually a sign that I'm about to completely lose it. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're telling me that you and your mother are going to be sipping champagne at 30,000 feet in business class seats that recline into beds, while I'm bouncing along on potholes in a bus for... I grabbed the ticket from her hand and looked at the itinerary. 47 hours? 47 hours. It's not that bad, she said, and she actually believed it. I could see it in her eyes. She genuinely thought this was fine. You'll get there eventually. And honestly, the bus route goes through some really beautiful areas. There's this mountain pass that's supposed to be stunning. You should take pictures. Beautiful mountain passes, I said flatly. You want me to take pictures from a bus while you and your mother, who by the way is not supposed to be on our honeymoon, are drinking complimentary cocktails and watching movies on personal entertainment systems. Don't be dramatic. Mom's only coming for the flight. She's not staying for the whole trip. I felt something snap inside me, like a rubber band that had been stretched too far for too long. Oh, well, that makes it so much better. She's only hijacking the first 2 days of our honeymoon. How generous of her to leave us the rest of the trip. She's not hijacking anything. The company wouldn't pay for 2 business class tickets for us, so she offered to help by using her frequent flyer miles for one of them. She's doing us a favor. A favor? A favor? A favor would be her not coming on our honeymoon at all. A favor would be her letting us have one goddamn trip without her involvement. A favor would be you, my wife, telling her that this is inappropriate and insane. Haley's face shifted from confused to defensive, her arms crossing over her chest. You're being really ungrateful right now. Do you know how expensive business class tickets are? We should be thankful that. Thankful. I started laughing, the kind of unhinged laughter that probably should have concerned me. You want me to be thankful that I get to spend 2 days on a bus, sitting next to who knows who, probably someone with a live chicken or a goat, no legroom, no air conditioning, sketchy rest stops, while you and Mommy Dearest are being served warm towels and gourmet meals. It's not a third world bus, she protested. It's a reputable company. They have Wi-Fi. Oh, Wi-Fi. Well, That changes everything. I can post Instagram stories about my miserable journey while you post selfies from your lie-flat seats. That'll be fun for everyone. Why are you being like this? I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd be mature about this. Mature. She wanted me to be mature about being relegated to bus status on my own honeymoon so her mother could take my place. I looked at her standing there, holding those tickets, genuinely perplexed about why I wasn't on board with this plan, and something in me just gave up. Not in a sad, defeated way. In a clear, decisive, absolutely done with this nonsense way. You're right, I said, and my voice went eerily calm. I should be mature about this. Let me show you how mature I can be. I walked over to my suitcase, zipped it up with more force than necessary, grabbed my passport and wallet from the nightstand, and picked up my carry-on bag. Haley watched me with growing alarm, finally starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going according to her plan. What are you doing? She asked, her voice getting higher. Being mature, I said, heading toward the bedroom door. I'm making a mature decision to not spend 47 hours on a bus so you can have a mother-daughter vacation disguised as a honeymoon. You're being ridiculous. Where are you going? I stopped at the doorway and turned back to look at her. She looked genuinely shocked, like she couldn't comprehend that I might actually have limits, that there might be a line even I wouldn't cross. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. You know what the saddest part is? I said, you really don't see anything wrong with this. You really think this is normal. You think asking your husband to take a 2-day bus journey so your mother can sit in his seat is just a minor inconvenience. You think this is what marriage looks like. Stop being dramatic and just. You'll regret this, I said simply. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually you're going to look back and realize what you threw away. And I hope that business class seat was worth it. Then I walked out of that bedroom, down the hallway, and out the front door of our apartment before my sarcasm turned into something that would require bail money. I could hear her calling after me, her voice shifting from angry to panicked, but I didn't stop. I just kept walking, pulling my suitcase behind me, feeling lighter with every step despite carrying luggage. Amusement at the absurdity of it all. A bus ticket. She'd actually expected me to take a bus ticket while she flew business class with her mother to our honeymoon destination. The elevator doors closed, and I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I looked tired, sure, but also somehow younger, like I'd just set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. My phone started buzzing in my pocket. Haley calling, no doubt, but I ignored it. I had a hotel to check into, a trip to cancel, and a marriage to seriously reconsider. In that order. Eventually. She'd said I'd get there eventually, like arriving 2 days late to my own honeymoon covered in bus grime was just a quirky detour rather than a complete deal-breaker. Well, eventually, she'd figure out what she'd lost. Eventually, she'd realize her mother couldn't keep her warm at night or build a future with her. But I wasn't waiting around for eventually anymore. I was done. I checked into a downtown hotel at around 10 p.m., rolling my suitcase through a lobby that was way too fancy for my current emotional state. The kind of place with marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than my car, and a front desk clerk who was professionally trained to not ask questions about why a guy shows up alone with luggage, and the haunted look of someone who's just made a life-altering decision. God bless hospitality workers and their commitment to minding their own business. Checking in. The clerk asked, her smile perfect and practiced, her name tag reading Jennifer in elegant script. Yeah, I said, realizing I didn't actually have a reservation because this had been a somewhat spontaneous escape. Do you have any rooms available? Preferably something quiet, away from happy couples, maybe on a floor where I won't hear anyone having a better time than me. Jennifer's smile didn't falter, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, maybe sympathy, definitely the look of someone who'd seen this scenario before. We have a king room on the 8th floor. It's away from the elevator, nice and quiet. There's a minibar. Perfect. I'll take it. And Jennifer? If anyone calls asking if I'm here, you've never seen me. I'm a ghost. A phantom. I don't exist. Understood, sir, she said, and I swear I saw the hint of a smile. We're very good at discretion here. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on a hotel bed that was somehow both too soft and too firm, staring at the room's service menu like it held the answers to life's biggest questions. The room was nice, Neutrally decorated in that way hotels do, where everything is beige and inoffensive and could be literally anywhere in the world. There was a desk, a TV mounted on the wall, a bathroom with those tiny bottles of shampoo that always make you feel like a giant, and a window with a view of the city skyline all lit up like a Christmas tree designed by someone on an energy drink binge. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left the apartment. I'd ignored the first 15 calls, watched the voicemails pile up, let the text messages accumulate into a novel-length guilt trip. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked the damage. 10 missed calls from Haley. 3 from Marjorie, which was honestly impressive speed considering she probably needed Haley to tell her what happened first. 2 from Owen, who'd apparently already heard about the situation through the friend network grapevine. And 1 call from a number I didn't recognize, which was either a spam call about my car's extended warranty or the universe trying to reach me about my terrible life choices. The voicemails were a journey through the 5 stages of grief, except instead of grief, it was, my husband just walked out on our honeymoon because I tried to make him take a bus. Haley's first message, babe, come back. Let's talk about this. You're overreacting. Her voice was annoyed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum over vegetables. Second message, okay, I get that you're upset, but this is ridiculous. Just come home and we'll figure something out. Still annoyed, but with a hint of worry creeping in. Third through 7th messages. Progressive escalation from, you're being childish, to, I'm worried about you, to please just answer your phone, to, this isn't funny anymore. But the real gem, the voicemail I will probably remember on my deathbed, was from Marjorie. Her voice came through the speaker dripping with venom, with that special kind of passive-aggressive rage that only mothers and mother-in-laws can truly master. This is absolutely ridiculous, she started, not even bothering with a greeting. You're humiliating Haley. Do you understand that? You're embarrassing her, making her look bad, acting like a spoiled child who didn't get his way. Grow up and get to the airport. This is supposed to be a happy time, and you're ruining it with your selfishness. Haley deserves better than this. She deserves a man who's grateful for the sacrifices being made, who understands that sometimes we don't all get what we want. Life isn't fair, and the sooner you accept that, the better off everyone will be. Now stop this nonsense and act like an adult. I listened to that message 3 times, and each time I found something new to laugh at. Humiliating Haley? I was humiliating her, not the other way around. Not her humiliating me by essentially demoting me to bus passenger status on my own honeymoon. And the sacrifices being made? What sacrifices? The sacrifice of having to fly business class instead of letting her husband have that seat? The sacrifice of having to bring her mother along on what was supposed to be a romantic trip for 2? I deleted the voicemail and laughed so hard the guy in the next room knocked on the wall. You okay in there, buddy? His muffled voice came through. Never been better. I called back, which was partially true. I mean, I'd just imploded my marriage, was sitting alone in a hotel room at 11 p.m. eating overpriced cashews from the minibar, and had approximately 50 unread text messages ranging from concerned to accusatory. But somehow, impossibly, I felt lighter than I had in months. Like I'd been carrying around a backpack full of rocks, and someone had finally told me I could just put it down. I ordered room service, a burger, fries, and the most expensive dessert on the menu because if I was having a breakdown, I was going to have it with chocolate lava cake. While I waited for the food, I scrolled through the text messages, which ranged from predictable to absolutely unhinged. Haley, please come home. We can talk about this. Haley, I don't understand why you're being like this. Haley, my mom is really upset. You made her cry. That one made me snort. I'd made her cry? The woman who'd just tried to steal my honeymoon seat was crying because I had the audacity to not go along with her insane plan? Haley, everyone is asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth, I muttered to my phone. Tell them your husband grew a spine. Owen's texts were more straightforward. Dude, I heard. You okay? Followed by, need me to come get you? And then, I'm proud of you, man. Seriously, that last one actually got me a little choked up. Owen had been warning me for months, trying to get me to see what was happening, and I'd brushed him off every time. The fact that he wasn't saying, I told you so, meant more than I could express. I texted him back, I'm good. At a hotel downtown. Needed space to think. His response was immediate. Want company? I can bring beer. Tomorrow. Tonight, I just need to sit with this. Copy that. Call if you need anything. Even if it's 3 a.m. and you want to cry or burn something. I got you. That's friendship right there. Not judging, not giving unwanted advice, just being available. Unlike marriage, apparently, which came with terms and conditions I hadn't fully read before signing. The room service arrived, delivered by a cheerful guy named Marcus who took one look at my face and said, "Rough night, huh? You have no idea. Well, the burger's good. And the cake is killer. Whatever you're going through, at least you've got good food." After he left, I sat at the little desk by the window, eating my burger and watching the city below. Cars moving, people walking, the world just continuing on like my entire life hadn't just shifted on its axis. It was weirdly comforting, actually. The universe didn't care about my drama. Life kept going. The planet kept spinning. Somewhere out there, people were having worse days than me, and somewhere else, people were having better ones. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Haley. "Are you coming to the airport tomorrow or not? I need to know." I stared at that message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me, the part that had been trained over months to accommodate, to compromise, to always be the reasonable one, wanted to apologize. Wanted to say I'd overreacted, that we could figure something out, that I'd take the stupid bus if it meant keeping the peace. But then I thought about what that would mean. It would mean accepting that this was okay, that my feelings didn't matter as much as Marjorie's convenience, that I was willing to be treated like a second-class citizen in my own marriage just to avoid conflict. It would mean teaching Haley that she could keep doing this, keep prioritizing her mother over me, keep making unilateral decisions that affected both of us, and I'd just roll over and take it. So instead, I typed, "No, Haley. Figure it out without me." And then, because I apparently have a flair for the dramatic when properly motivated, I added, "Have a great flight. Both of you." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone completely. Not just silent mode, completely off. The screen went black, and with it, all the guilt trips and accusations and desperate attempts to make me feel like I was the crazy one. That night, I slept like a baby. If babies slept peacefully knowing they'd just escaped 2 generations of control and manipulation. Which, come to think of it, maybe babies sleep so well because they haven't accumulated any baggage yet. They haven't learned to people please or avoid conflict or accept unacceptable situations because change is scary. I slept hard and deep. No dreams, no interruptions, no national anthem blaring at 2 a.m. because Marjorie needed to tell Haley something that absolutely could have waited until morning. Just silence and darkness and the soft hum of the hotel AC. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight streaming through the window, I lay there for a moment just experiencing what it felt like to not immediately reach for my phone to check if Marjorie had opinions about my breakfast choices or if Haley needed me to do something for her mother. It felt amazing. It felt like freedom. I ordered breakfast from room service. Pancakes, bacon, orange juice, coffee so good it probably cost more per cup than my usual grocery store brand cost per pound, and toasted my newfound bachelorhood with overpriced orange juice served in actual glassware. "Here's to bus tickets," I said to my reflection in the window, and to knowing when to walk away. That was the first morning in months that I felt like myself again. Not someone's husband who wasn't measuring up. Not someone's son-in-law who was never quite good enough. Just me. Finally, I woke up the next morning feeling surprisingly refreshed for someone whose marriage was currently circling the drain. No alarm, no responsibilities, no national anthem blaring from someone's phone at an ungodly hour because Marjorie needed to share her thoughts about climate change or her neighbor's new landscaping. Just natural light, hotel silence, and the kind of peace that comes from making a decision that's probably terrible but feels absolutely right. I was in the middle of brushing my teeth, using the fancy hotel toothbrush that came in its own little package, feeling like I was living in luxury, when my phone, which I'd plugged in overnight, started vibrating so aggressively it nearly walked itself off the nightstand. I turned it back on about 20 minutes earlier, mostly to check the time and maybe order some coffee, and had been enjoying the brief period before the chaos found me again. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages, and 1 voicemail that had come in approximately 3 minutes ago. All from Haley. The timestamp on the first call was 6:47 a.m., which meant they were at the airport, probably going through security or checking in, living their best business class life, while I was here in my hotel room with complimentary toiletries and zero regrets. Curiosity got the better of me. I know, I should have just deleted everything and gone about my day. But there's something about a voicemail from someone who's clearly in distress that makes you want to know what's happening, even if that person tried to send you on a 47-hour bus journey less than 24 hours ago. I hit play on the voicemail, put the phone on speaker, and Haley's voice came through, panicked, high-pitched, that special frequency that dogs can probably hear from miles away. Oh my God, you need to call me back right now. Everything is falling apart. They overbooked the flight, overbooked IT. And now they're saying we might not have seats and Mom is losing it, like completely losing it, and security is getting involved and I don't know what to do, and there was a muffled sound, some yelling in the background that was definitely Marjorie's voice. Just call me back, please. I really need you right now. I stood there in my hotel bathroom, toothbrush in hand, listening to the chaos I'd successfully avoided, and felt absolutely nothing except mild amusement. Actually, that's not true. I felt a lot of things, but guilt wasn't one of them. Mostly I felt vindicated, like the universe had decided to deliver some immediate karma with express shipping. The text messages painted an even better picture. I scrolled through them chronologically, watching the situation deteriorate in real time like I was reading a play-by-play of a disaster. 6:52 a.m. Haley, we're at the airport. They're saying there's an issue with our tickets. 7:03 a.m. Haley, they overbooked the flight. Can you believe this? 7:15 a.m. Haley, Mom is talking to the manager. She's handling it. Oh, I bet she was handling it. I could picture it perfectly. Marjorie in full Karen mode, demanding to speak to supervisors, throwing around phrases like, I know my rights, and this is unacceptable, and do you know who I am? Spoiler alert, they didn't, and they didn't care. 7:23 a.m. Haley, this is getting bad. They're not listening to Mom. 7:31 a.m. Haley, security is here. Mom got a little loud. A little loud. That was like saying the Titanic had a little leak. Marjorie getting a little loud, probably registered on seismographs in neighboring states. 7:39 a.m. Haley, they're threatening to ban us from the airline. Please call me. And there it was. The beautiful, poetic justice of it all. Marjorie, who'd orchestrated this entire bus ticket fiasco, who'd stolen my honeymoon seat, who'd been so confident in her ability to manage everything, had apparently managed her way right into getting them potentially banned from the airline. The most recent text, sent just 5 minutes ago, was the cherry on top of this schadenfreude Sunday. Please, can you come? I need you. I stared at those words for a long moment. I need you. 3 words that would have sent me running to help her yesterday, last week, last month. 3 words that I'd been waiting to hear for our entire relationship, some acknowledgement that I was necessary, that I mattered, that my presence was valued and not just tolerated. But she didn't need me. Not really. She needed a problem solver, a fixer, someone to clean up the mess that she and her mother had created. She needed a supporting character to swoop in and save the day so they could continue on with their plan, the plan that had explicitly excluded me from the comfortable seats and included me only as an afterthought bouncing along on public transportation. I could see it playing out in my head like a movie. If I went to the airport, and that was a massive if, I'd show up and immediately get pulled into Marjorie's drama. She'd be in the middle of a full meltdown, probably with airport security standing there looking exhausted and underpaid, with other passengers filming the whole thing for TikTok, with airline staff who'd completely given up on reasoning with her and were just waiting for her to tire herself out. Haley would see me and her face would light up with relief, like I was the cavalry arriving to save the day. Thank God you're here, she'd say. Tell them they have to give us our seats. Tell them we had reservations. Tell them this is our honeymoon. And Marjorie would probably try to recruit me to her side, expecting me to back up her increasingly unhinged demands, to add my voice to her I know my rights speech, to be the man she'd been criticizing for months because suddenly she'd need one. Then what? Best case scenario, they'd find us seats, probably not together, maybe not even in business class anymore, and we'd all get on the plane. I'd spend 8 hours trying to pretend everything was fine while Marjorie complained about the airline and Haley tried to smooth everything over, and we'd land in Bali with the trip already ruined before it started. We'd spend 2 weeks with the tension of this morning hanging over us, with me being expected to just forget that they'd tried to bus ticket me, with Marjorie probably staying longer than planned because after all this stress, I need a vacation too. Worst case scenario, we'd all get banned from the airline, lose our money, and end up back at the apartment where nothing would change except everyone would be mad at me for not preventing the disaster that I hadn't caused and hadn't even been present for. Either way, I'd be the bad guy. I'd be the one who abandoned them, who wasn't there when they needed me, who ruined the honeymoon by having the audacity to object to being treated like a second-class citizen. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, still holding the toothbrush like an idiot, my hair sticking up in 17 directions, wearing the hotel bathrobe that was way softer than anything I owned, and made a decision. I picked up my phone, opened my messages, and typed out a response. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard for a second, and then I committed. No, Haley. Figure it out without me. Short, simple, direct. The kind of text message that doesn't leave room for negotiation or guilt-tripping or emotional manipulation. I added one more line, because apparently I couldn't help myself. You needed me yesterday, sweetheart. Today, you've got seat 34B in humility class. Okay, so it was petty. I'm fully aware it was petty. But you know what? Sometimes petty feels good. Sometimes petty is exactly what the situation calls for. Sometimes you need to let people know that actions have consequences, that you can't just treat people however you want and expect them to come running when it's convenient for you. I hit send and immediately felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying around this obligation, this expectation that I'd always be available to fix their problems and accommodate their wants, and I'd finally just put it down, set it on the ground, and walked away from it. My phone immediately started ringing. Haley's name flashing on the screen, probably calling to yell at me or beg me or try some combination of both. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Again. Declined. Then came the barrage of texts, and I could practically hear the progression of emotions through the screen. Are you serious right now? This is not the time for jokes. We are in crisis and you're being petty. Fine. Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. I can't believe you're doing this to me. That last one almost made me laugh out loud. Doing this to her. Like I was the one who'd created this situation. Like I was the one who'd brought her mother on our honeymoon and given away my seat and expected everyone to just smile and go along with it. I turned off my phone again, completely off, not just do not disturb, and finished brushing my teeth. Then I took the longest, hottest shower of my life, using every single complimentary product the hotel had provided. The shampoo, the conditioner, the body wash, the lotion, the whole 9 yards. I stood under that water until it started running cold, and even then I stayed a little longer, just because I could. When I finally got out and dried off, I felt like a new person, lighter than airplane luggage, freer than someone who'd just canceled a trip to Bali had any right to feel. I ordered room service again, eggs Benedict, hash browns, bacon, fresh fruit, and the biggest cup of coffee they had available. When it arrived, I tipped generously and ate my breakfast by the window, watching the city wake up below me. Somewhere out there, at the airport, Haley and Marjorie were probably still dealing with the consequences of their own actions. Maybe they'd gotten on a flight. Maybe they hadn't. Maybe they were on their way to Bali. Maybe they were in some airline office filling out paperwork about Marjorie's outburst. And for the first time in months, it wasn't my problem to solve. That realization, more than anything else, made me understand that I'd made the right choice. This was what freedom tasted like. Eggs Benedict and vindication, with a side of zero regrets. By the time they got back from their disaster trip, and I heard through the grapevine courtesy of Owen, who'd somehow gotten the full story from a friend of a friend who worked at the airline, I was long gone. Not just emotionally checked out, but physically removed from the situation. My side of the closet was empty. Drawers cleared out like I'd never existed. Netflix password changed, which honestly felt more satisfying than it should have. I'd even taken the good coffee maker, the one I'd bought before we got married, because some things are worth fighting for and quality caffeine is one of them. I'd moved into Owen's spare bedroom temporarily, which was basically a storage unit with a mattress, but it was mine. My space. No mother-in-law opinions about the furniture arrangement, no unexpected visitors with keys, no national anthem ringtones interrupting my peace. Owen had been amazing about the whole thing, not asking too many questions, just helping me load boxes into his truck and occasionally offering beer and terrible advice like, maybe you should get a motorcycle, or have you considered growing a beard? She called. Multiple times. I watched her name flash on my screen, Haley Red Heart, with the little heart emoji that now felt like a cruel joke, and sent every single call straight to voicemail. I didn't listen to the messages. Didn't need to. I could imagine what they said. Some combination of anger, confusion, maybe some tears, definitely some blame. The usual script when someone realizes they've pushed too far and the other person actually left instead of just threatening to. She texted Owen when she couldn't reach me. Professional move, really. Going through the best friend because the direct line wasn't working. Owen showed me his phone one night while we were playing video games and eating pizza that we'd ordered without consulting anyone's mother about toppings. Is he okay? Her text read, and I could hear the worry in those 3 words even through the screen. Owen looked at me, eyebrows raised. What should I say? Tell her the truth, I said, not looking away from the TV where I was currently winning at Mario Kart, which felt symbolic somehow. He typed back, better than he's ever been. He even started jogging. And that was the truth. I had started jogging. Me. The guy who considered walking to the mailbox a workout. The guy who'd told his high school gym teacher that running was against my religion. But something about the whole situation had given me this weird energy, this need to move, to do something physical and productive and completely unrelated to relationship drama. Every morning I'd wake up, put on the running shoes I'd bought on impulse at a sporting goods store, and hit the park trails. I wasn't training for anything, wasn't trying to set records or impress anyone. I just ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached and my brain finally shut up about everything that had happened. It was cheaper than therapy and more effective than drinking, which I'd also tried but found disappointing. Turns out whiskey doesn't actually solve problems, it just makes you forget them temporarily and then gives you a headache. The running thing drove Haley crazy when she found out. Owen told me she'd texted him back something like, he never exercised when we were together, with an implied accusation that I was somehow doing this to spite her. Like I'd taken up cardiovascular fitness as a personal attack on our failed marriage. Lady, I'm running away from my problems. Literally. It's the healthiest coping mechanism I've developed in years. Meanwhile, according to my sources, and by sources I mean Owen's extensive network of gossips, Haley was sitting in our empty apartment, crying while Marjorie said helpful things like, good riddance. Men are replaceable. Sure, lady. Keep collecting daughters-in-law you can micromanage. See how that works out for you. I'm sure there's a long line of guys eager to sign up for the marry my daughter, but also emotionally adopt me package deal you're offering. Real hot commodity in today's dating market. Owen said Marjorie was spinning the whole story to anyone who'd listen, painting me as the villain who abandoned his wife on their honeymoon, while conveniently leaving out the part about the bus ticket and her presence on what was supposed to be a romantic trip for 2. Classic selective storytelling. I'd have been impressed by her commitment to the narrative if I wasn't the one being villainized. But here's the thing, I didn't care. Not in a bitter, angry way, in a genuinely peaceful way. Let them tell whatever story made them feel better. Let Marjorie be the hero who saved her daughter from the terrible husband. Let Haley believe I was the problem. None of it changed the fundamental truth that I'd been treated like garbage and finally had the self-respect to walk away. I was sleeping better, eating better, laughing more. I'd reconnected with friends I'd been neglecting, taken up hobbies I'd abandoned, started actually enjoying my life instead of just surviving it. Freedom, it turned out, looked a lot like jogging through a park at 6 a.m. while everyone else was still sleeping off their bad decisions. Months later, 4 months and 13 days, not that I was counting or anything. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, the kind of pretentious place where they have 17 different milk alternatives and the baristas have opinions about extraction times. I discovered it during one of my post-marriage exploration phases, when I was basically relearning how to be a single person who could make decisions without committee approval. It had become my Saturday morning ritual. Get up, go for a run, shower, then hit this place for a coffee and whatever book I was currently reading. Simple, peaceful, entirely mine. I was deep into a thriller about a guy who faked his own death to escape his problems. Relatable content, honestly. When I felt that weird prickly sensation you get when someone's staring at you. You know that feeling, like your subconscious picks up on eyeballs before your conscious brain catches up. I looked up from my book and there she was, standing about 10 feet away near the pastry case, looking at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Haley. She looked different. Not bad different, just different. Like a rom-com protagonist after the mandatory breakup montage where they eat ice cream and cry and wear sweatpants for 3 weeks straight. Her hair was up in a messy bun, the genuinely messy kind, not the carefully crafted, I woke up like this Instagram kind. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized hoodie, minimal makeup, and her eyes had that puffy quality that suggested either allergies or a lot of recent crying. In her hand was one of those overpriced lattes with sad foam art, a heart that had collapsed in on itself, which felt metaphorically appropriate. For a second, we just looked at each other. I watched her debate whether to approach, saw the internal calculation happening behind her eyes. Part of me wanted to go back to my book, pretend I hadn't seen her, let her make the choice to walk away. But I was too curious. For months of silence, and now here she was, looking like she had something to say. She walked over slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Hi," she said softly, her voice smaller than I remembered. "Hi," I replied, closing my book but keeping my finger in the page. A clear signal. This conversation had a time limit. "Can I sit?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. I shrugged. It's a free country. She sat down carefully, cradling her sad latte like it was providing emotional support. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I'd learned a lot about boundaries in the last 4 months, and one of them was that I didn't owe anyone comfort when they'd made me uncomfortable first. "You look good," she finally said. "Different. Did you lose weight?" "I started running," I said. "Turns out exercise is easier when you're not carrying around emotional dead weight." She flinched. "Good. I deserve that." "You deserve a lot of things," I said. "That's just the starter pack." Another silence. She stared at her latte, watching the sad foam heart dissolve into brown oblivion. "I'm sorry," she said finally, and her voice cracked a little. "I'm really genuinely sorry. About everything. The bus ticket, the wedding, all of it. I didn't see it at the time, but I see it now. How messed up it all was." "I'm sure you are sorry," I replied, and I kept my voice neutral. Not cruel, not kind, just factual. Hindsight's 20/20 and all that. "I've been in therapy," she continued, like she was confessing something significant. "Working through a lot of stuff with my mom. Setting boundaries. It's been hard." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. Therapy's good. Boundaries are good. Personal growth is excellent. She looked up at me then, and I could see hope flickering in her eyes. The dangerous kind of hope that makes people think they can rewind time. That sorry erases everything. That growth means you get a do-over. "Do you think?" She started, then stopped. Took a breath. Tried again. "Do you think we could try again? Start over?" "I'm different now. Things would be different." And there it was. The question I'd maybe been expecting, maybe been dreading, definitely been prepared for. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to figure out what I felt. Anger? Not really, not anymore. Sadness? A little, maybe, for what we could have been if circumstances had been different. Temptation? Surprisingly, no. None at all. I smiled, not unkindly. "Only if your mom takes the bus this time." I watched her face, waiting for the joke to land, for her to laugh and acknowledge the absurdity of everything that had happened. But she didn't laugh. She just looked confused, maybe a little hurt, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't taking her seriously. I laughed though. I actually laughed. A genuine sound that came from somewhere deep in my chest, where I'd been storing all the irony and relief and hard-won wisdom of the last 4 months. People at nearby tables looked over, probably wondering what was so funny about a clearly emotional conversation. "I'm serious," she said. "I want to try again." "I know you are," I said, standing up and gathering my book and coffee. "That's the problem. You're serious, and I'm done. But hey, good luck with the therapy. Really, I hope you figure it out." I left her sitting there with her collapsed foam heart and her confusion, and I walked out of that coffee shop feeling absolutely nothing except maybe a little proud of myself for not wavering. for not falling back into old patterns, for knowing my worth. As I walked back to my car, the morning sun warm on my face, I realized something that felt important enough to stop and acknowledge. The best honeymoon I ever had was the one I spent alone. Not in Bali with beaches and temples and couples massages. Not in some romantic resort with rose petals and champagne. Just here, in this city, in Owen's spare room, rebuilding my life piece by piece. No Wi-Fi from Marjorie's constant interference. No mother-in-law inserting herself into every decision. No bus ticket relegating me to second-class status in my own relationship. Just peace, freedom, and first-class happiness that I'd earned by finally putting myself first. I got in my car, turned on my favorite playlist, and drove home to a life that was entirely, beautifully mine. And yeah, I was going alone. But alone, it turned out, was exactly where I needed to be.